Welcome back to Rocky Mountain Residential, a podcast from MCM Collective. I'm Kelly McBartlett.
I'm Christine Cavalier.
And Blake McBartlett.
Today, we're going to talk about strategies for buyers and sellers in any market. So we've all been doing this a while.
Yes.
Well, some more than others.
You've been doing this like 3-4 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was being facetious. Like a quarter of your time.
And we've been doing it, 13?
Yes.
Plus, you have a little bit of extra before.
Right. A little extra.
So we've teamed up several markets, and a lot of buyers and sellers, they're really always looking for an advantage in any market for themselves. And so there's you guys probably have strategies that work in any market. Let's take buyers, for instance. What do you think is important for buyers to focus on, regardless of the market?
Being prepared.
What do you mean by that?
I think knowing what their budget is, understanding what the particular market is that they are in at the time. So you mentioned that markets are all over the place, right? They might be a buyer's market, a seller's market, a neutral market. Regardless of what type of market they're in, being prepared with meeting with the lender ahead of time, or if they're paying with cash, understanding what their budget is, being in agreement on that budget if it's more than one person, and then just really understanding what the market is doing so that they know, is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? Is it a neutral market? And the way that they can determine that is by working with a really knowledgeable local agent who understands. Right.
It's good. It's like first step, talk with an agent
Yes.
to help understand what market you're in.
Right.
So how do you determine, the media always has all these headlines about the real estate market, regardless of what market we're in. So how do you really determine between those headlines and what your agent might be telling you or your friends might be telling you? What are good ways to understand that?
I always go back to the data. National headlines are there for a reason. There are some national trends. However, I feel like our local market, especially in Northern Colorado, is a little unique. In the big boom or like bust, you could say, if like almost 10 years ago now, which is crazy. Our trends really didn't match national trends. I mean, we lost maybe 1-2% of appreciation, and then the next year we gained that back. So really looking at the data. I also think Northern Colorado as a whole is really large. I mean, we sell kind of the whole Northern Colorado Front Range, and there are micro markets among that data set that are really unique. So like Boulder, Old Town Fort Collins, and there's a lot of commuter cities with different demands and different trend lines that are different than other communities. So really knowing like, I want to move to Northern Colorado, but what does that really mean?
Right.
Like, where are you really wanting to be? And really, what can you afford? And asking those questions, I think, is really important.
Yeah. So when people are looking at those headlines and looking at data, and they might have a lot of misconceptions about what to do and how to protect their value best. So what do you advise people to look at when they really want to ensure that their asset is going to be protected long term? What things should they be looking at?
Are you talking about like from a buyer perspective? Like when they're going to make an offer and they're concerned of whether the house is worth that value? Is that what you're asking? Okay. What I like to talk to my clients about is that a house has many different functions, if you will. One of those things is if you're buying it as your primary residence, it's a place that you call home. And so there's intrinsic and separate value in your home versus the house as an asset or the house as an investment. So I like to just walk them through, it's about your lifestyle. It's about your comfort level. What are you expecting from your home? And separating that out from the investment asset. Because I think those are two totally separate things. And I think that helps often. I find that helps buyers to go, oh, okay, that's right. I am getting value outside of what the asset is bringing me financially.
That makes sense. I also ask clients, I'm like, how long are you planning to be here? Like, there's no crystal ball, but if you're wanting to be here like 5 to 7 years, then you can really be competitive and pay top dollar. But if you're hoping to be here for like 2 years, let's say 5% appreciation year over year on average, 5 to 7%, we might land at this value if the market continues at this pace. So there's like more risk. So I really talk about like risk. And like same thing with like finishing basements. I mean, how long are you going to be here? 5 to 7 years? You'll probably grow that appreciation, like get your money back. But if you're wanting to finish the basement and move in 2 years, you're probably not going to recoup that cost
Right.
or make dollar for dollar in that investment. So really, I focus mine on time, how long you're planning to be in the home.
How do you talk to your clients about that?
Yeah, I think similar to both of you. So talking to them about, the asset that they're investing in is their home, like you said, Christine. So you can look at it a little bit differently than you can a stock, for instance. But I still think it's important, and I tell my clients it's still important to evaluate that asset and how it's going to perform over time. And so similar to what you said a couple questions ago, Blake, looking at that micro market and that neighborhood for how it performs over time is really important. So if a particular neighborhood maybe has above average appreciation, that might be something that you can look into how you're going to offer and be competitive on this property. If it's less than average, you might factor that in, and maybe it's a location you want to be in anyways, and that's okay, but you should know those facts.
Right.
So I think it's similar to both of you, but really focusing on the data and the way you're going to use the home is what I think is most important. It leads me to another question. So our area gets a lot of relocation clients from other areas. So whether you're looking in Boulder or Fort Collins or Loveland, we seem to attract people from other areas and larger cities, the coasts. And those people are always bringing their viewpoint from their market into this market. What are some common things that you find yourself telling people moving from other markets about our market?
I would say the first thing, it really is dependent upon what market they're coming from.
Yeah.
I feel like if they're coming from like large coastal metropolitan areas, they're like, wow, like Colorado is really affordable, which is interesting. I feel like if you come from like the Midwest or like even Texas, for example,
Right.
they're just like, wow, like things are a lot more expensive here. However, like kind of like pulling apart the price, people from different communities are also paying like higher property tax. And in Colorado is relatively low. So really trying to make our apples to oranges market apples to apples and best create some type of pattern or like how to bridge the gap in terms of their knowledge to help educate them on their buying power. That's how I kind of look at it. What about you, Christine?
I do that exactly. And I also looking at, you said, like taxes, the cost of maintaining the home, all of those things. I also like to talk to them about the stability of the market here. A lot of times the coastal buyers that are coming in, if they've lived in those areas for a long time, are used to seeing wild swings. I mean, that, going back to the previous question about long-term value in the home, and what kinds of questions we get from people. I think if you're coming from the coasts or some of the other areas in the country that see those really wild swings, massive appreciation followed by a great decline, I think it's good to talk to the relocating client about how stable our market is here. That over time, I think there's only been twice since this early 90s, or no, 70s, sorry, early 70s, when we have the data going back to, that we've seen an overall decline in value in the greater Front Range area.
Right.
So really talking to them about the stability of our pricing here.
Mm-hmm. I think that's super important. And I also think, something that maybe isn't always obvious, but there are a lot of code differences when you're in different markets that they may not understand, which I think is really important to talk to, especially if you're coming from a market like a lot of the California markets or the Washington markets. When somebody's buying a resale home, they are used to getting a certain level of disclosure upfront and inspections, and that may not be available here. And so, I think it's really important to piggyback off of value, even just to talk about the process a little bit with these relocating clients. Every contract, every state is different in terms of the way
Yeah, vastly different.
and so depending on how much they've sold real estate in those bought or sold real estate in those areas, their expectations could be a lot different in this market. So
And I think like key players, like I had a client relocate from the East Coast and they're like, oh, like what attorney do you use?
Right.
I'm like, oh, in Colorado, they actually don't, real estate attorneys aren't involved in the process unless you would like them to review contracts, but that's kind of
Right.
not the quote unquote normal. And then also for the inspection, they're like, what about termites? Because that's just really common, like termites, and that's like the big deal in their communities. I'm like, oh, like, well, we can do that here. There's not, that doesn't really happen. There's few, but not common. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Really important. Okay. So switching to sellers. And what I'm thinking about with sellers is, if we look back 4 years ago to the COVID market in this area, this wasn't true across the country, but in this area, it was, we were seeing a lot of people moving here because they could,
Right.
or buying a second home here because they could, and, or they could work remotely. There's a lot of reasons to move here. So we were seeing increases of, 15, 20% year over year. And we were seeing multiple offers on every property that would go 20 or 30 or 50% over asking price. Um, that's not a typical market, but I remember, have you had this experience recently talking to a seller that's still in their mind?
Yeah, it is. I think sellers are starting to catch up to the reality of the market, which changed 2.5 years ago, really. Um, they're starting to catch up. And at the same time, I do think there are still some sellers that feel like all they have to do is put their house on the market and it will sell. Their expectation might not be that they're going to get a bunch of offers, but their expectation is still that it will sell quickly,
Mm.
and for what they want it to sell for. And that is, for the most part, not what the market is doing. The market's really complex and complicated
Mhm.
right now. We do have some homes that are selling with multiple offers, right away at the beginning, maybe a little bit over list price, but that's not the norm. Um, I think there are m- more commonly right now, if a home is really well prepared, and priced correctly, that it will sell relatively quickly for close to list price or maybe list price. Is that what you guys are noticing?
Yeah, I think a really good example of preparing for market and really listening to the advice of your real estate broker is your listing that you had in Windsor. In that submarket in their community where there are over 100 homes,
Yeah.
resale and new construction. And like there's homes that were on the market before you listed.
Great.
You're closed now.
Great.
I mean, to talk about like how did you go through that? I mean, you were really competing against a lot of different homes in the same price point.
Yeah, we were. And I think it goes back to educating the client on what the market's doing, like what we've all talked about already, looking at the specific data for that community. That community is much different than other areas in the Front Range right now because of the fact that there are so many resale homes, new construction, a lot of competition for any individual home that's on the market. So I had a really good in-depth conversation with the client about that, sitting down and going over the expectation of, we're competing against 25 homes, all in the same price point, all new or relatively new homes. So not a lot of distinction between them. And just having the client understand what that market was, how to be competitive with pricing, making sure that the home was really, um, in the best I mean, it wasn't in bad condition to begin with. The home was only 3 years old. So, but making sure that even the tiniest of little things like touching up paint, um, redoing some light fixtures, things like that, really small things that can make a big difference. And then, of course, staging,
Mm.
um, I think is really what the differentiation was. And then every week looking to see what the market is doing. What went under contract, what didn't, what price reductions are happening. How do we keep ahead of that so that we could sell quickly?
So you keep talking about data. You mentioned it. You also mentioned it, Blake, when we're looking at helping our sellers and being very specific, and honest and forthright about the data and what it's telling us. How do you define that data? So for any given house, I mean, are you looking at the entire city? Are you looking at the entire region? Are you looking at just specifically that neighborhood? Are you looking at specific price points? Like how do you define it?
I think you have to look at all of it, to be honest, and really like slice the pie. I feel like in like Fort Collins, for example, we've had kind of Midtown, or one of our clients calls it the guts, which I think is great. Um, there's some neighborhoods in like Guts that have really gentrified this last year, and like price points have increased to $100,000. And if you're across a major cross street in a different like neighboring community, like that might not be true for yours. So I think you have to look at the big picture in terms of the competitive set, and then also like your more micro markets, and see like, okay, if I was a buyer with like this lens needing like this type of home, like which ones am I also probably going to be touring?
Right. Exactly. I think that's really important, Blake. I know I've caught myself sometimes in the last year of looking too micro. I mean, sometimes you need to, like that case in Windsor, right? Like that was what I needed to focus on, very micro in that one subdivision, right? Because that was much different than everything else. But in a lot of other areas, it is just what you said, like what other homes is a buyer going to be considering compared to this home? Some buyers are very specific. Some buyers want to be in a very specific neighborhood. Those are unique neighborhoods. And so I do think if you're looking at, trying to figure out the price for a home for your seller, if you get stuck in just looking at that neighborhood, you could really be missing the boat big time on pricing. I think one example would be that house I had in Fort Collins. On the west side. And if I looked just right in that specific neighborhood, pricing would have been different than looking to see, okay, it's an entry-level home, 3-bed, 1-bath, ranch-style home. Um, what other entry-level homes are there within a bigger geography of Fort Collins that a buyer would be considering? Because that type of buyer probably is considering larger geographies. So,
Mm. I think another thing is like in large print communities, there's usually multiple builders, and making sure you're comping your home to like same like
yeah,
ish. Um, there's several communities, there's like 4 or 5 builders,
right.
all in different price points.
And at different quality levels.
Right. And just because builder X sold for this doesn't mean builder Y is going to appreciate or get the same value. So I think dividing up the submarkets, these bigger communities are really, really important. I think the other thing with like this conversation, a big differentiator is like custom luxury homes versus more like national or
Right.
Mhm.
the builder.
Mhm.
So like this neighborhood specifically, right? Custom lots.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All above grade square footage.
Yeah.
It's like harder to comp.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do you determine the price for your clients right now? Like if for you're gonna, you're doing a listing, going to meet with your seller. We've talked about what different areas you consider. How specific do you make it micro? Do you make it larger? What other factors do you look at when you're going to determine the price for a listing?
So we certainly have to look at, sold comps in that neighborhood specifically, because that's what an appraiser is going to use, right? And the most recent data is the best. And,
Right.
if we can find in the last 6 months or even 3 months, that's best. But we also have to be like looking at active property right now as well, right? Because that is what other buyers are going to be seeing. So taking both of those things into consideration is important, and deciding, how do we want to price ourselves against the competition? Do we feel like there's a reason to be at the top of that range, or do we need to be at the bottom of that range so we're considered first for any buyers that are available?
Right.
Um, and then, like you both said, in terms of a competitive set, when we're on the market and seeing what buyers are seeing across the range, I think there's a lot of ways to slice and dice it, but it's important to define it and
Right.
then really put yourself in the eyes of the buyer to say, if I'm a buyer in this market, in this area, looking in this school district or this neighborhood or in this city, what am I looking at? And define it the best we can to see what our competition is. It's important though to really scrutinize yourself, right? And make sure you're looking at the correct data. Because if you were looking on Zillow
Right.
at a very vast range of the entire zip code, there's so many neighborhoods and so many different values in there.
Right.
You need to get hyper focused with your agent, is my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. What about condition of the property? Like how right now do you think that's playing into your pricing analysis?
Go ahead. I was going to say, it's almost more extreme in this market than in other markets. And the reason being, property that is out of date is getting a larger discount right now than a property that is in, modern, updated condition. And then the same for something that has everything taken care of and is in really good functional condition.
Right.
Those properties are getting a premium, and others are getting a more severe discount.
Yeah.
I think people are being more savvy with their money with
Yes.
interest rates higher, or people leaving 2-3% rates for a larger home paying this much. They're really like value costing it. Like, does this make sense?
Right.
Is it worth it? Not that buyers are sophisticated. There's a lot of information.
Yeah.
So, we have a lot of tools available to us at MCM Collective and at Compass. Are you finding any strategies that, sellers aren't taking advantage of enough that they should be, or something that we can offer them that they may not know?
Yeah. Really great question. Going back to that condition topic, the great thing that we're able to offer is basically a loan. It's, fronting the client money to do some of these either repairs or updates to the home before we go on the market. I've been talking to my clients about let's flip your own home before we put it on the market, right? Everybody knows about the value of a flip, right? There's tons of television shows out there. You put some paint here, you do some flooring there, you update some light fixtures, some plumbing fixtures, spruce up the front yard, and wow, all of a sudden this house is worth $100,000 more. That still is the case, like you just mentioned, Kelly, like you just mentioned. Interesting. It's, I think in the past, sellers would think of, okay, well, I can sell it for X. If I want to make the extra money, I'll fix it up. But right now I'm talking about if you want to sell it for this price, you have to fix it up. Otherwise, you're looking at a severe discount. So it's a little different than it's been before, where it's like it's a step up if you fix it up. It's more like if you don't fix it up, it's a huge step down. And so I think it's really important if a seller has funds available themselves to do that, or we do have great resources and tools at Compass, either no interest or low interest rate, that does not have to be paid back until the house closes.
And you're talking about Compass Concierge.
Compass Concierge, yeah.
Yep, yeah, which is a great program. Like you said, like low or no fee in many cases, and depending on the equity in the home and the price of the home, we can have access to quite a bit of funds,
Right,
to get that
yeah.
stuff done.
And I've had a lot of clients use it this year.
It's such a great tool, and you are an awesome I get pictures sometimes from Christine, like, which tile do you think would be better, or what
This house.
color? Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, I get into it. It's like I get to embrace my inner creative side.
That's hard design.
It is fun. Yeah,
You're good at that too. You're really good.
I think we're all good at it.
I think we're all good at it for other people,
Yes.
but for our own stuff, it's like, help me, please.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Too many choices.
So Compass Concierge, anything else you guys think people should be taking advantage of more?
For Compass,
Mm-hmm.
just the data that we have, of metrics that we have. I mean, Compass, there's so much data that we have access to the other brokerages just don't have.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is that right now we have private exclusive and 3-phase marketing that Compass rolled out at the beginning of this year, maybe the end of last year. I can't quite remember the timing. It's a really, really great tool where we can take a listing and just market it to other Compass agents and one-on-one to other buyers. And it's a great way, couple things about it. It's a great way to test the market. We're talking about this market. It's a little bit softer, if you will. And so it's a great way to test the pricing of a home and the reaction of the market without having days on market. Right now, kind of the kiss of death is days on market, right? If you put a home on the market and either because of condition or because of pricing, it sits, after a certain point, buyers lose interest in it, right? So that's one major advantage of being able to utilize Compass's private exclusive offering. We can get feedback from buyers, we can get feedback from other agents. So we know, do we need to make some adjustments before going to the live market in the MLS where it hits everything and you can never take it back? So maybe we find out, oh, the condition isn't quite what we thought buyers would look at it, or the price isn't what buyers are willing to pay. And we can make those adjustments without having the additional days on market. And then we can go into the coming soon phase where, again, it's a blast out to all the Compass agents to get a jump on a property. I think when you're when you have an offering that's kind of exclusive, it gets buyers to act quicker typically because they think, oh, I have an opportunity to take advantage of something that somebody else doesn't have the opportunity for. So, and then we go to the market. So I do think that is a great tool that Compass has that other agencies don't.
Yeah, and I really like that program for a lot of the reasons you just mentioned, but I also really like that you're able to expose the property multiple times. It's almost multiple, you end up getting 3 launches with the property. And in that first phase of private exclusive, like you said, you're testing price. But you can also be working on getting things in really good order. Yeah. Potentially, like, what if you have planned on replacing the counters and the timing doesn't work out for some reason? We can adjust that price before we go on market, right? Before it's out there to the world,
Right.
before we're accumulating days on market, right? And then also, I've also had a couple of scenarios where the market has actually improved for that particular property, and we've
Right.
increased the price before we've gone on the market.
That happened to me once this year too.
So
Yeah.
I think it can be used in either way.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
okay. Well, sage advice that weathers any market. What would you say to buyers?
Like my one last parting
Yeah,
thing,
for buyers.
buyers. Let's see here. Timing of the market.
Mm,
There's going to be more inventory during certain times of the market than others.
Yeah.
So
And I think that can play either way, actually, right? So sometimes if you're looking for a very specific type of house, maybe timing you want to be in when there's more inventory coming out. On the flip side, if you're in the market when there's less inventory, there's also less buyers. So it's just understanding what that timing is and then having the buyer make that decision what best fits their strategy.
yeah.
what about you?
Yeah. What about me? Christine mentioned it earlier, but I really think having your money figured out, whether it's cash or financing, working with a really good blender, um, knowing that upfront is so important and valuable. It also helps you determine your timing.
Yeah.
It helps you determine what you should really be looking for. So you're not going over budget, or maybe you can actually afford more than you think.
Right.
So I think having that piece figured out is important no matter what the scenario. So what about sellers? Sage advice from each of you.
Have your house really well prepared. And work with an agent who really understands what the current market is.
I'm back on timing. It's the primary driver for all the metrics, I think.
Yeah,
Market
and-
cycles.
Yep, that's good. I would say talk to your agent, make sure you trust them,
Yeah.
and really analyze the data.
Yeah.
That's what it is for me. So, okay, well, that's it for us for this episode. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.